So this is where the fun begins, right? How could you not be fired up by what lies ahead? That's right, it's college football playoff time. Welcome in to the Spring Break College Football Show. This is, of course, your favorite ball knower's favorite ball knowing show. Today is Thursday, December 18th. Had the wrong date on here. Glad I double checked that. Thursday, December 18th. On today's show, we're just talking ball. Game previews for the 4 playoff battles that we are set to watch starting Friday night. Predictions. And really, that's it. I was thinking we could dip back into the transfer portal. Not a ton of stuff in comparison to what we had on Monday. I thought we could do a little bit of coaching stuff. There's still no developments with the Michigan search. Everything outside of the playoffs is kind of at a standstill right now. So just game previews, and then we'll get on out of here and go enjoy what's going to be an amazing weekend, as it always is, of college football. Forgot to mention, we'll have fun while we do it. I don't know why I started saying that at the beginning of every show. I like to have fun. We'll have fun. Before we can get things started, I, of course, have to ask every single one of you to please support this show. If you are watching on YouTube, that comes by way of liking the video, subscribing to the channel. Hit a refresh on the page. If you're watching right now, you can skip ahead to whatever marker this is for the show. Maybe it's around like a minute and 45. Just hit refresh. You know why? It's another view. Spam it. Just keep refreshing. If you don't want to listen to what I have to say over the next 40 minutes, just hit refresh and bump these views up. I've liked what we've gotten for some of our last shows. We finally figured out when to post the videos. I don't know why I thought just like posting them in the morning or in the mid-afternoon was great. You post them at night, people get home, people can watch the show. Views have been way better, so I appreciate you all supporting us there on YouTube. Of course, this show does still exist on podcast platforms. If you are listening, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your shows, make sure to leave a 5-star review, subscribe to the channel, and as always, our socials are at SpringBlakeCFB. That is both Twitter and TikTok. Okay, let's just jump right into it. Friday night in Norman, Oklahoma, the 8th-seeded Sooners are hosting the 9th-seeded Alabama Crimson Tide in a regular season rematch from a game that told us so much about the path these two teams were about to head on the rest of the way through the regular season. Two very different stories. For Oklahoma, that win over Alabama showed us that they were capable of getting past good football teams with defense and special teams alone, not needing an ounce of life from their offense. The Sooners held opposing offenses to an average of 13 points over the final 3 weeks. They forced 6 sacks, had 6 takeaways. Tate Sendell, your favorite kicker's favorite kicker, the only kicker that's been mentioned on this show, connecting on all 5 of his field goal attempts over those final 3 games. He's now hit on 23 of 24 attempts this season. Best kicker in the game, hasn't missed an extra point. All while the Sooner offense is averaging just 84 yards over the final 3 games. They went a combined 13 of 43 on third downs, and John Mateer completing just over 50% of his passes. Oklahoma's ability to capitalize on opponents' mistakes, squeeze the life out of the game, and win ugly is what pushed them through a gauntlet of a schedule and right into the college football playoffs. So that was the story for Oklahoma from this game. Honestly, it was one of the more impressive. It's the start to one of the more impressive runs we've seen in the sport, at least specifically in the SEC when I come to think of how teams finished. And for Alabama, that game was really the first time we saw their offense get smacked around by an opponent since its Week 1 loss to Florida State. And we remember how shocking of a result that was at the time, and what the team turned into from weeks 2 through 8 was unbelievable. And now in this game against Oklahoma, it wasn't like Alabama got flattened. I think they finished the day with over 400 yards of total offense. But for a team that had not been turning the football over, did so 3 separate times in that game. They converted on just 5 of 13 third down attempts. And it was also the first time that we saw their passing game be unable to facilitate short yardage plays that had been making up for their inability to run the football through the first 8-9 weeks of the regular season. And now, In that game, Alabama finished with 80 yards on the ground. They finished the season with the 118th ranked rushing offense in the country. They had been getting by deception and RPOs and screen passes, facilitating what usually you get from your ground game. You saw them in that game against Oklahoma really not have much of a chance to facilitate those short yardage situations, which impacted their ability to stretch the field, and all of a sudden painted the story that was going to go the rest of the way for Alabama, which was a very ineffective offense. Now, even considering all that and the issues we've seen from the offense since, the Crimson Tide were still very much in that football game because the play they got from their defense. Sam Womack, phenomenal job as the team's defensive coordinator down the stretch. They finished the year with the 6th best passing defense in the country, 12th best scoring defense in the country, and a top 20 group when inside the red zone. Did a great job holding teams to field goals, not touchdowns, for most of those games this season. Now, as I mentioned at the top, that Oklahoma offense, we'll talk about them again in a second, has been a shell of itself since Mateer first got hurt. So it's easy to discredit the work that Alabama did in that game against Oklahoma, but at the same time, it's not like they're going to be facing some new and improved Sooner offense this time around. It's the same team. John Mateer, just simply put, has been a different dude since the thumb surgery, and not in a good way. Completion rate is below 59%. He's throwing for fewer than 200 yards per game, 6 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Average air yards per attempt is just at 5.4. You are not getting the ability to stretch the ball down the field. Everything is close to the line of scrimmage. He's giving you some stuff on the ground, but not a whole lot. And really, this group offensively has scraped by the 2 to 3 explosive passing plays that they connect on a game, whether it's Isaiah Satania, Deion Burks, very much just like, okay, can we get the ball out to our wideouts and can they make a man miss and take it to the house? That's what Oklahoma has been doing. Oklahoma's had some time off, as have all teams that, didn't play conference title weekend. You had the bye last week as well, too, with Army-Navy. But this thumb surgery from John Mateer, there's a history of it being a one-year thing where, yeah, you can make the quick return, but you're not the same thrower. You're not as accurate. The ball doesn't come out as clean until you have like a full season of getting comfortable. So even though there has been an extended break for John Mateer where you're like, maybe he can get rested up, maybe the arm can be a little bit better, I don't expect him to revert back to what we saw through the first month of the regular season. I think that's a 2026 thing at best for him. But if I'm going to sit here and point out John Mateer's flaws, I need to do the same with Ty Simpson. Since their game against Tennessee, he is completing just 58% of his passes. He's averaging 223 yards per game, which isn't bad, but when you compare it to the 275 or 276 he was having before that, it's a staggering drop-off. 8 touchdowns to 4 interceptions in that stretch. Again, not bad, but way worse than the 18-1 touchdown to interception ratio he had through their first 7 games. I've been curious for a while with Ty Simpson if we get to the end of the year and we find out about this lingering injury that he's been dealing with. But to me, when I watch him and I watch his struggles, to me it looks more like exhaustion than a nagging injury. He has been sacked a ton this season, 25 times to be exact, and 10 times since November kicked off. Taking a ton of brutal hits. This first game against Oklahoma, he got knocked around. Auburn, he got knocked around. It almost seems like he's not got the yips, but he's just a hair off because he's exhausted. Because why wouldn't you be with all the hits he's taken? That being said, while I don't think Mateer is going to return back to his early season form just because a couple weeks off, I do think Ty Simpson will benefit from the bye week they had. Now, he had to play the extra game against Georgia, so he didn't get the extra game. He also got beat around in that game too. So I don't know if it's necessarily something where all of a sudden Ty Simpson is back to week 4 form where you're like, wow, is this the best quarterback in college football? I don't think he's going to go back to being the 70% completion rate guy that we saw then, but can he be just a little bit better? That's something I'm looking for early in this game is how does he look? How does the ball coming off his hands? Is he accurate with his receivers? Is the deep passing game back? That's going to be vital in this for the Crimson Tide if they want to move on to the second round of the playoffs. So, in a game with 2 great defenses, some struggling quarterbacks, and piss poor ground games. I think what this might come down to is which team's star receivers step up the most. Now, the star receiver for Oklahoma has been Isaiah Satania. He's coming off 2 straight 100-yard games, approaching his first 1,000-yard season with, I think he needs like 52 in this game or somewhere around that. And for Alabama, it's been Jeremy Bernard, who's had 7 games with 5 or more catches this season. But outside of those guys, I want to look further down the stat sheet for both of these teams because they have some wildly talented wide receiver twos that haven't necessarily had the seasons you may have expected them to have at the beginning of the year. Deion Burks at Oklahoma is a bad man with the football in his hands. And I don't mean to take away everything that he's done this season, but he hasn't topped 65 receiving yards since week 2 of the regular season. And again, it's been Satania who's really taken on the form as the go-to guy for this offense. I'm very curious if Burks has a transcendent game in his back pocket where he can have a 100-yard game or make a bigger impact for this offense than he has up to this point. And if there was ever a time for Ryan Williams to get off the mat, it would be in this game. That dude finished last season considered the second best wide receiver in football. And the only reason he isn't the best is because right now Jeremiah Smith is doing stuff at a level that is unheard of at the collegiate level. Ryan Williams, at his best, is a game-changing player. But this year, it has been a ton of drops, some bad effort plays, turnovers. The talent is still there. You watch a few grabs, him make guys miss after the catch, and you're like, man, if this guy could just get in an early rhythm, like this could swing everything for Alabama in the playoffs. If he can turn things up a notch for this game, that would go a huge way in swinging the outcome for the Tide. And think about what am I trying to say? The makeup for it, or the hey, forgive me. There's a word for that. I don't know the word for it, but in that game against Oklahoma the first time around, he had a really bad fumble on a punt return that set up an easy scoring drive for Oklahoma. It would be great to get off the mat for this one and be like, hey, I know that I played a role in that loss that kind of sent us down this tailspin at the end of the regular season. I'm back. I'm ready to go. It's playoff football, and you're going to get the real Ryan Williams. So that's, to me, outside of the prolific receivers that have been successful for these teams, if Deion Burks can have a big day, 75 plus receiving yards, or if Ryan Williams can be the Ryan Williams we saw last year, that'll swing the outcome of this. Before we make our pick, injuries I want to bring up just because they're an important part of the game. Alabama, everybody was banged up toward the end of the year. They're going to be without their star edge rusher, LT Overton, in this game. It looks like tailback Jam Miller is going to return. He got banged up in the... was it the Auburn game? Yeah, he missed the SEC title game. I think late against Auburn he got hurt. He's expected to come back, which is huge. I know that they haven't had a prolific ground game, but having your best tailback is helpful. And then right now, tight end Josh Cuevas. He is listed as questionable for this game. Cuevas, down the year, really developed into the go-to guy for Ty Simpson, and being able to get him back, as any receiving room does, it makes everybody's life a little bit easier. So if Cuevas can make his way back onto the field, I all of a sudden start to feel even better about Alabama's offense. And for Oklahoma, really the only injury news is good news. They're expected to get back star edge rusher R. Mason Thomas for this game. Maybe their best player overall, their best player on that football team. Now, R. Mason was not on the field when these teams first met, and we spoke about how the Bama offense was not keeping Ty Simpson upright. Keep an eye on that one. If Simpson is getting banged around and R. Mason Thomas is back with a multi-sack game, it could be a long day for the Tide offense. All right, let's make my pick. As I'm saying this all to you, and really with both games between Oklahoma and Alabama and Texas A&M Miami, I don't have a great feel either way. But one thing that I've felt all year is that I've never felt good about Alabama's ability to win gritty, low-scoring games this year. 8 of Alabama's 10 wins came by scoring 27 or more points. And when they were held below that total, they went just 2-3. Those 2 wins were also against a dead LSU team and a nail-biter against Georgia, where they sped out to 24, and Georgia just slowly marched all the way back. Alabama's best shot in this game is to race Oklahoma to 24. Not impossible by any means, because Oklahoma might not even get past 20. But it's a lot to ask for out of this offense that hasn't shown me the ability to run the ball all year, and a passing game that has started to take a massive dip over the last 6 games. Alabama was my pick to win it all. I badly want the Tide to right the ship on offense and get this thing rolling like it was in the middle parts of the regular season. But on the road, in what's going to be an incredible environment at the Palace on the Prairie, I'm going to take the home team to win and move on to round 2 by a final score of 20-16. Obviously, a very frustrating end to the year for Alabama if that is the case. To look like the best team in football through the middle parts of the season. We've always talked about how important it is to be peaking at the right times. Neither of these teams are necessarily peaking at the right time, but I have more trust in Oklahoma's defense to stop what has been keeping Alabama alive this entire point. Will I leave that game feeling great about Oklahoma? Hell no. I think their run will end the following weekend at the Rose Bowl, but this will still be an incredibly impressive job from Brent Venables getting this team as far as he has, with half of his team being non-functional. So, going to be a fun one. Going to be a fun one Friday night. But let's march on. How are we doing on time? Of course, whenever I look over to the side, I'm always looking at the clock. This doesn't matter if you guys are listening on Spotify or Apple, but whenever I look over to the clock, it's because I'm recording this before going to work, and I'm like, okay, did I talk too long? We're at a good pace right now. So let's keep marching on. Look, 2 of these playoff games have point spreads that are north of 2 possessions. So we aren't going to go in as much detail for these next 2 as we just did with Alabama, Oklahoma, and as we will eventually with Miami, Texas A&M. But before we get into the games, I do just want to say one thing at the top. I think at least one of these massive underdogs are going to be able to keep it closer than we all expect them to. College football is a constant reminder that all of us do not know jack shit about this game. And after 2 weeks of hearing everyone and their mothers complain about the 2 G5 teams, I just have this little devil on my shoulder just screaming to me that one of these teams is going to keep it close, and we'll be coming on Monday morning talking about, wow, you know what? Hats off to Tulane, or hats off to James Madison. They hung around. They didn't get the win. Again, I'm not saying that one of these teams is going to go in to Oxford or Eugene and pull off the upset. But I don't think we're in for 2 50-point blowouts. I think at least one of these games is going to be kept close. And I hope, obviously, by my shirt, it's the one up in Eugene. But let's start in Oxford first, as we get into the game preview portion of this, where Tulane is heading back to take on the Rebs for the second time this season. The first one resulted in a 45-10 victory for Ole Miss. The tale of the game was the play from the quarterbacks. Trinidad Chambliss, 419 yards of total offense, 2 passing touchdowns. And on the other side, Jake Retzlaff had a 5-for-17 day with a measly 56 passing yards. Now, that game was an anomaly for Tulane. And obviously, it's the one game against really good competition, so you'd be like, oh, well, no shit, Blake. But they did finish the season with the 15th best mark in successful pass rate. The passing offense outside of that game was a really effective group. Retzlaff has done a really nice job throwing against zone coverages, but Ole Miss kept their corners on an island in this first game and blitzed a lot, leading to the worst performance of the season. And this time around, there's no need for Pete Golding to change a single thing about that approach. He knows his corners have a significant talent edge, when matched up with Tulane's wide receivers. They also know that the opposing quarterback struggles against man coverage and pressure, so I'd expect much more of the same. I think you're going to get a blitz-heavy approach from the Ole Miss defense. I think you know that you can take advantage of the talent deficit along the offensive line and out wide. And Retzloff under pressure. I mean, he said it in an interview last year on a PFF show, why he prefers to be rushed with 4 and not take extra guys on. Obviously, every quarterback does, but I'd expect more of the same in this rematch and maybe make for another inefficient day for the Tulane passing attack. Now, one thing that could be just like a little bit different for John Summerall's group this time around is the emergence of Jamari McClure at tailback. Redshirt freshman, took on an expanded role at the end of the regular season, really became a home run threat for this offense, averaging 6.8 yards per carry over the final 4 games. That addition has taken some of the pressure off of Retzloff's arm and have also made his legs more serviceable on read options when you now have to consider stopping McClure, taking it to the outside. Now you can pull it back and Retzloff can go along the other way. So they've had a little bit more success running the football that way. But that being said, Ole Miss on offense, even without Lane Kiffin, should have no issue putting up another 40-point outing on the Green Wave. Tulane has one of the worst run defenses in the country. I'd expect another strong day from both Kawan Lacey and Trinidad Shambliss. Shambliss, I think, ran for 113 yards in the first game. Kawan Lacey had 2 touchdowns. And it's another perfect matchup for the Rebels through the air, as it was the first time. Ole Miss has one of the best deep passing games in the country, if not the best deep passing game in the country, as we all know. And Tulane has given up the 10th most explosive passing plays through the air this season. We all know how these games are going to go. I'll stop the info dump there. Give me Ole Miss to win and cover. Final score 38-14. That's the only blowout this weekend, right? Time for me to rip the Band-Aid off. Can't delay it any longer. James Madison at Oregon. The Ducks are favored over the Dukes by a staggering 21.5 points. This game is so obviously funny for me. I have done nothing but applaud Oregon down the stretch and pump all of my belief into them. I've continued to claim them as the most dangerous team in the playoffs, and now it will come at the expense of my beloved alma mater. One thing that I do want to say before we get into the game itself is that I have loved everything between these two fan bases since this matchup was first announced a couple weeks back. I am not the most vocal JMU alum on the internet, but I have plenty of friends who are, and the banter between JMU and Oregon's fan bases have been so entertaining and fun, and just a reminder that this is all supposed to be fun. It's college football. We're playing a game. It's supposed to be fun. Special shout out to my friends Bennett and Jack. Jack Fitzpatrick, I was in school with. We were both in the same major at James Madison. Bennett was actually my sports editor when I was writing for The Breeze at JMU. They are the two guys running it at JMU SN. They have been on a tear the last 2 weeks. If you're someone that is on Twitter and you're a fan of JMU or Oregon, you're noticing the work that they've been doing. So shout out to them. It's been really fun. It's cool to see something that they've built grow in the way that it has and really take advantage of this opportunity on the main stage. But again, it's supposed to be fun. If you're mad and you've been screaming for the last 2 weeks about the 2G5s, like I get it. In a vacuum, if you're a team that got left out, if you're someone that just wants more fun games, like I get it. I get why it's not as appetizing. It's supposed to be fun. And just watch these two fan bases have fun with a matchup that we all know is going to end a very specific way. All right, I've delayed the game preview long enough, even longer now that I wanted to start with that. Let me just I'm going to try differently for this game preview. I'm going to try and paint to you what JMU would need to do to keep things close or pull off the upset. I know they're not going to, but we're going to paint the game preview like that. So what I'm going to do is just list all of the things that JMU will need to translate from what they did at the Sun Belt level to what they'd need to do against one of the best teams in the Big Ten. The first thing that would need to translate as they go up in competition is the Duke sack rate. JMU has the 10th best sack rate in the country, and obviously if you're going to be getting to Dante Moore and bringing him down on 8.71% of dropbacks, then you're going to be able to keep yourself within the game. Offensively, JMU will also need its explosive run game to translate as they head up into Eugene. The Dukes have 90 rushing plays that have gone for 10 or more yards, the 6th highest mark in the sport. A lot of that has been our dude Wayne Knight at tailback, an absolute terror. He's averaging 6.6 yards per game, 10 total touchdowns. You obviously need your best players to play their best games if you're going to pull off an upset like that. So you need to have your star tailback have a fantastic day on the ground to not just put up points, but keep Oregon's very explosive offense off the field. Now, one thing about that is that Oregon does not allow the explosive run. They've allowed the 3rd fewest all season, but again, if JMU is capable to do that, then you can obviously paint the picture as to why this thing would be kept a little bit closer than the 21.5 point spread indicates. And then you'll need to do all the. You'll need to win the battle on 3rd downs. JMU has the 5th best 3rd down defense, the 18th best 3rd down offense. Oregon ranks 14th offensively and 28th defensively. Need JMU to be the better team on 3rd downs, both sides of the football. And then you obviously also need to unload the bag of trick plays, deception, disguises, aggressiveness, and just try to luck your way into putting points on the board. How'd I do? Did I convince any of you? No? Damn. Here's the thing. Despite me trying to paint the path for my Dukies to keep this thing close, I have been all over this Oregon team. As I predicted on last week's show, I think they're about to go on a run that ends with a national championship. You can't do that unless you beat JMU in the first round. Hell, even a month ago, I said the return of DeCorian Moore and Evan Stewart, both of whom are now listed questionable for this game, as they are nearing their long-awaited returns, are going to make them the most potent offense in the nation. As someone who is trying to predict the games, obviously, I'm going to take Oregon to win and move on to the Rose Bowl? Is it the Rose Bowl? I don't think it is. The 2nd round of the playoffs. But as an alum that would like to take some moral victories home, I'm going to take a JMU cover by a final score of 41-24. Still big win. Still, you're like, hey, yeah, Oregon just had a field day. Maybe JMU just gets like a late score where, hey, we feel good. 24 points, that's kind of crazy to predict now that I'm saying it. But whatever. I just want to keep it close as an alum. And this will be a fun end to the Bob Chesney era of JMU. And then we can transition into what will be the Billy Napier era, which I'm very excited for. But yeah, Oregon's obviously going to win. I'll take it by 17 just because I'd love to think that the Dukes will keep it close. But if this is a bloodbath, I'm not surprised. All right, we're going to take one break today, and then we'll talk the other big game of the weekend, Miami at Texas A&M.
Balake. Where is Balake at?
Now, did I save Miami versus Texas A&M for the end of the show just to make sure you guys listened all the way through? Yes. Now, do I also know that there are timestamps put in the YouTube description to allow you to skip ahead to this part of the show? Also, yes. I'm the person who puts the timestamps in there. But hopefully you didn't realize that until I now just said it. But here we are, one game to go in the opening round of the college football playoffs, and it is an awesome matchup between the Aggies and the Canes. This is football porn to me, these two teams. Texas A&M favored by just over a field goal in this game. The over-under is set at 48.5. These two football teams are almost a damn near spitting image of each other, at least in regard to how I view both of them. They have some of the most talented and ferocious trench play in the country, led by two head coaches that live and die by physicality up front. Reuben Bain Jr., Cassius Howell, they're two of the best edge rushers in the sport. They have beefy and sturdy offensive lines that do a great job of keeping their quarterbacks upright. Speaking of the quarterbacks, these teams, as a spitting image, also have the throwers that scare the absolute living hell out of me. Marcel Reed, fantastic when he's on his A-ball, but he has been far from that down the stretch. Three 3 two-turnover games in his last 5 matchups against FBS competition, 7 games with a completion rate below 65% this year, and we also saw him get a little dinged up in that regular season finale against Texas, which does worry me about how dynamic he'll be able to be with his legs against what I believe to be a really good Miami front seven. And then there's Carson Beck, who overall has had a really good season, but then one week will just step onto the field and throw up an absolute stinker. We all remember the 4-interception game he had in that loss against Louisville. He threw 2 more in that overtime loss to SMU. And he also played really poorly in his one game against SEC competition this year, completing 56% of his passes for just 160 yards and 1 interception against Florida. That was back in week 4 of the season. And that's something, that right there is what stands out to me the most about Carson Beck right now. His 2024 season in the SEC was a rough one. 64% completion rate, 12 interceptions, 4 multi-turnover games. Now heading back to another tough SEC environment, playing against a defense that's far better than most he faced this regular season. I could easily see him reverting back to his 2024 self and imploding Miami's chances at pulling off the upset. He is just a guy that, like I said, you walk onto the field one day and he just doesn't have it. But even if Beck doesn't have it in this game, I still think Miami will be able to keep it close because I think there are a lot of matchups that are playing into their favor for this one. I know that Texas A&M has run the football well this year. They've been one of the best rush attacks in the country, but Miami has the 7th best run defense in the country. They've also been great at preventing mobile quarterbacks from running up and down the field on them, something that will be even more in play, like I mentioned, if Marcel Reed isn't at 100%. I don't see him having this 70-yard rushing output against the Miami defense. Miami's also done a nice job at preventing explosive passing plays with the 20th best mark in the sport, and Texas A&M's explosive passing game has really simmered down since the start of November. Miami has a great third down defense. Texas A&M is just average on third downs. Miami has the edge in penalties, is better at controlling the time of possession. But to me, the biggest advantage of all needs to come on the ground if the Canes want to pull off this road upset. This offensive line and stable of backs for Miami have made for a very effective ground game. Meanwhile, Texas A&M is giving up 5.5 yards per carry, which is one of the worst marks amongst Power 4 teams. The Aggies also still really struggle with missed tackles, a huge contributor to that 5.5 yards per carry allowed. So if Miami is the one that brings the physicality to the football field, then they can do a really nice job at negating Texas A&M's home field advantage, keeping the Aggie offense on the sideline, and limiting the impact that Carson Beck needs to have on the game. So if Miami's tailbacks are churning out 5-6 yards a carry and you're in those third and manageables, Carson Beck just needs to be a game manager. And when they have asked Carson Beck to be a game manager, he's done a pretty good job of it, not just this year, throughout his career. Now, what I do love for the Aggies in this game is they are nearing perfect health for what feels like the first time all season. Scooby Williams, Bryce Anderson are making the return back on defense. Going to be massive for this group. Scooby, one of the best, defenders. Might be the best defender for them outside of Cassius Howell. Fantastic linebacker. Bryce Anderson is a safety. That'll be huge maybe for the missed tackle issues that they've had. I don't know if it'll completely solve it, but it will be nice. And then star tailback Le'Veon Moss is listed as questionable, which would be a huge upgrade for this offense if he can make his return after getting dinged up back in October. Having Le'Veon, in addition to Ruben, in addition to the other guys that have filled out the room since he got hurt, if you can get something out of Marcel Reed, all of a sudden you can do a better job at controlling the line of scrimmage, time of possession, third and manageables, all that very important stuff for an offense that has a quarterback that I don't fully trust right now. I feel like I haven't given the Aggies enough love in this preview, so I do want to take a second and discuss their wide receiver tandem. Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, we've talked about them at length this regular season, one of the best duos in the country. And while their performance has tailed off after an electric start to the year, there is a glimmer of hope that one, if not both of them, could have a field day this weekend. And the reason being is that Miami, I've been very happy with the improvements they've made in their secondary. Corey Heatherman, the new defensive coordinator for them this season, has done a great job of fixing the back end of that group. But they also haven't faced too many electric wideouts this season. And when they did, that receiver went off. And that was the game against Louisville. Chris Bell, one of the best receivers in the country, unfortunately tore his ACL at the end of the season, which is just brutal for somebody that's heading to the NFL draft. Against Miami, 9 catches, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Canes had no answer for him all day. So if one of these talented Aggie receivers, if not both, can step up in a moment like this, I could certainly see the passing game kind of spam that part of the offense in hopes of replicating the same success that Louisville had. As I mentioned with Alabama and Oklahoma, this game really is a toss-up to me. I don't have an awesome feel on it. I have felt for a while like Texas A&M was a very fraudulent team, skating by a manageable SEC schedule with some scattered strong performances. They haven't just been dominant the entire time. You think back to the low-scoring Auburn game, or how they needed a massive comeback over South Carolina, the loss to Texas. It just feels like they've been taking advantage of some nice opportunities in their way. Started hot, flamed out. I just don't think this team is playing close to its best football at the most important time of the season. Now, Miami has ebbed and flowed all year as well. They looked like one of the best teams in the country early on, where they ranked first, second, third. Like, they were a top 3 team through the first month, 5 weeks of the regular season. Dipped a little in the middle of the year. All of us kind of lost our expectations for them, but, quietly picked up some steam before the end of the year. At their absolute best, I think Miami is the better football team. And I think right now, Miami is playing close to their best football than Texas A&M is. So I'm going to take Mario Cristobal to march into Kyle Field and get himself a much-needed playoff victory, not just for himself, but for the University of Miami as well. I'm going to take it final score 23-17. Huge win for the Canes. Obviously, the same story from last year is going to be prevalent with the Aggies this year, not being able to finish. Last year they lost 3 of their final 4 to miss out on the SEC title game, miss out on the playoffs. This year they start 11-0, lose the regular season finale, which keeps them out of the conference title game. Then they go and lose a home playoff game. It would be a really unfortunate result for the Aggies and a kind of history repeating itself, but I trust more with Miami right now than I do Texas A&M. So yeah, there are our winners. Oklahoma over Alabama. We're going to take, obviously, Ole Miss and Oregon to move on. One upset being Miami over Texas A&M. And that's our show. Thank you guys for listening. I'll say it one more time at the end. Please support this show however you can. I appreciate all the support you guys have given. It's so fun to do this. I never want to stop. Hopefully I never have to. Enjoy the opening round of the college football playoffs. We do not have many games left. Make sure to enjoy each and every one of them. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'll talk to you next week. Peace.